Opus Studio Inc. was founded in 1990, and ever since then they've done a ton of grunt work. When I started this project, I decided to start with Arica for two reasons. First, I assumed most viewers would be pretty familiar with Arica, or at least more familiar with them than the next two on my list. Second, I wanted to show off a group that's more or less a success story. Arica isn't the biggest or most prolific development group, but for the most part, they have a relatively balanced body of work, with a number of original successes to their name as well as acclaimed license work and a good degree of recognition. Arica has, for lack of a better word, a high level of prestige for the sort of work that they do, especially within specific genres. Opus most certainly does not share that same level of prestige, or at least they wouldn't for a long time. The majority of their work is based in sound design and effects. They've got credits in over 40 games that I can actually find proof of, and probably contributed more than that to a number of other games as a shadow development studio. They're quite good at sound design, mind you, that's why they keep getting work, but sound effects are the type of thing most people don't notice until they're particularly unusual or out of place. Their original works are few and far between, and they aren't often commissioned to develop games for publishers. Not on their own, anyway. They usually work in groups with other developers. For another example of this sort of thing, keep in mind that Arica often took a lot of jobs that their staff would have been interested in anyway. For example, back in the early noughts, they had a lot of shoot-'em-up fans on staff, so when they were porting Dodonpachi Daiojo to the PS2 for Cave, they played the hell out of it, and even kept playing it for a while after they were done with the port. Opus, in contrast, took what they could get. That's not to say that they didn't have fun with it. There's just no way I'd be able to prove that either way, since the company doesn't do a lot of interviews, but their body of work is kind of all over the place. From kart racers to music games, shovelware to vanity projects, and all manner of sports games, arcade, simulation, and otherwise, Opus has stuck their thumbs in many pies over the years. Not many developers can boast that they're partially responsible for a system-selling hit in the form of Kid Icarus Uprising, and the creators of an entry in the Simple 2000 series after all. So it's really no surprise that they've made a few fighting games in their time, and helped out with a few others. One of their earliest fighting games that they worked on was Fighter's Destiny, released in 1998 for the Nintendo 64. Another developer named Genki did most of the heavy lifting, but Opus, along with another developer named Anchor, worked on the animations, stage designs, visual effects, and, of course, sound design, as well as other bits and pieces of the game. They also worked on the game's sequel, Fighter Destiny 2, and seemingly ended up with a larger share of the workload during development. In between those two games, they also released a karate game named Ichigeki Hagane no Hito in 1999, a very strict simulation game, licensed and based on Kyokushin karate. And knowing how Kyokushin practitioners get, I don't feel comfortable trying to figure out a translation for the name, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. You'll have to forgive my lousy pronunciation. And in 2000, around the same time that Fighter Destiny 2 was released, Opus also handled the PlayStation port of the first Ultimate Fighting Championship licensed video game. Anchor handled the Dreamcast port by themselves, oddly enough. Opus would go on to handle some of the animation work for most of the UFC games until Sudden Impact, released for the PlayStation in 2004, which I believe was the last PlayStation 2 Ultimate Fighting Championship game. In 2005, Opus co-developed a game called Ga-Rou-Den Breakblow alongside another developer named Gosho. It was a licensed game based off of a novel and manga series simply named Ga-Rou-Den, and Opus eventually released a follow-up, Ga-Rou-Den Breakblow Fist or Twist, in 2007. I might have said that ESP handled both of those games, which is technically kind of true, but well, there's no time like the present to make revisions, right? And while they were finishing up Fist or Twist, they also developed the aforementioned Simple 2000 game, The Blazing Fighting Leader. And it was brought over to Europe as Hard Knock High in 2007 as well. Interestingly, the Ga-Rou-Den Breakblow games were published by Entertainment Software Publishing, aka ESP, which had recently been acquired by D3 Publisher, while Hard Knock High was originally published by D3 Publisher in Japan and then published in Europe under Essential Games, which was D3's European branch. All that work and they still had to sell out to Bamco. Or maybe it's because of all that work and a little money to show for it, who knows. Anywho, despite the fact that Opus wasn't the driving force between these particular games, they do have some similarities to one another. The animation is probably the most notable thing. These games all have the sort of jerky, rapid movement that gets made fun of by most people. And the more recent games, such as Ga-Rou-Den Break Blow, have been mocked specifically for its unusual type of hit stun, where fighters don't react to blows until they are severely injured. But I think Ichigeki proves how overwhelming a game with rapid movement and instant hit stun can be. That said, Hard Knock High has enough limits on movement and attacks to at least be playable. Body damage is another thing that the company used as a staple for most of its games. It was a really popular gimmick from the late 90s to the mid-noughts, as I'm sure some of you know, and still finds its way into combat sports sims today. But I think Opus really hit it out of the park when they stuck close to Ga-Rou-Den's graphic depiction of injuries. The Break Blow system, where body parts can become completely useless and suffer massive damage when broken, adds a level of risk that most sports games understandably can't replicate. Another thing to note is that some of these games, like Fighter's Destiny or Ga-Rou-Den Break Blow, used round and life mechanics that didn't appear often. Fighter's Destiny used a fully customizable point system and a combination life/stun meter, both of which de-emphasized racking up damage and encouraged the sort of wombo combo moments that people usually eat up. Ga-Rou-Den, for its part, dusted off the shared life bar system from World Heroes 2, dropped the 10 count, and added a sort of desperation move concept for bursts of damage, which made the game more like a knockdown, drag-out fight. Both of these systems work to their respective games' advantages, and I think Ga-Rou-Den in particular benefited from Opus's experiences from the Fighter's Destiny games and the UFC games that they worked on. Opus learned a thing or two about grappling from those games as well. These games have some of the best grapple systems I've ever seen. Opus reuses a lot of animations from game to game, but they know what works with grabs and what doesn't, and it really sets their work apart from most other fighting games. Ichigeki is the linchpin on my view of Opus as a developer. The other games have a lot of different groups working on them, but Ichigeki was mostly made by Opus. Bandai just published it and did some touch-ups, and most of the things that are present in this set of fighting games I've mentioned can be found in Ichigeki. So that's enough to convince me that Opus knows what they do and how to go about it. But the company seems to have finally hit its stride in the RPG genre after 19 years. They hit gold in 2009 with the Hero 30 series, known as Half Minute Hero internationally. And they seem to have some success with mobile games, such as Batrix Floating Continent. So they'll probably just keep doing what they're doing right now. But hopefully some other company can match them when it comes to mixing and matching mechanics.